So good evening, everyone, both committee members and some staff visitors. Welcome to the first Special Education Advisory Committee meeting of this new cycle for the Peel District School Board. This meeting, for everyone's information, is being live streamed and recorded and will be posted on the Peel District School Board website for future viewing. I am Ted Byers. I'm acting superintendent of education, and as per the Education Act, I'm acting as the designate of the director of education, and I will preside over the meeting until there is a chair and a vice chair elected. So I will now call this meeting to order. And I'd like to begin this evening with a land acknowledgement, and I would like to invite our media technician, Mark, to play that recording for us this evening.
The land upon which we work, live, and sustain ourselves is the ancestral and treaty lands of the Michizagig Anishinaabe, also known today as the Mississaugas of the Credit, the rightful caretakers and title holders of this land. We also recognize the rich pre-contact history and relationships which include the Anishinaabe and the Ongwe-Hongwe.
Since European contact, this land continues to be home to Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. As responsible community members, we value the diversity, dignity, and worth of all people.
Colonialism displaced and dispossessed Indigenous peoples of their ancestral land
and continues to deny their basic human rights, dignities, and freedoms.
We are committed to learning true history to reconcile, make reparations, and fulfill our treaty obligations to the original peoples and our collective responsibilities to the lands, water, animals, and each other for future generations.
Thank you very much, Mark. And if you wouldn't mind putting up the agenda again this evening, that would be great.
He's so loud.
So once again, everyone, I offer my welcome this evening. In particular, I'd like to welcome to the new committee members, including both new and return community organization representatives, and obviously board trustees. We have a number of new faces this evening, and I'd like to acknowledge Susan Benjamin, who is a trustee representative on this committee, serving Mississauga Ward 5, Trustee Satpal Singh Johal. Welcome to this committee representing Brampton Wards 9 and 10, and to Jeff Clark, Trustee in Mississauga Wards 9 and 10. Thank you. I'm sure the committee chair, when elected, will wish to provide their own thanks and greetings and welcome, but please allow me on behalf of the board to thank the committee members for this service to SEAC for the upcoming year. Students who access special education supports and services are often students who are marginalized, experience disproportionate outcomes, and sometimes experience inequitable outcomes. So the work of staff and our community partners, such as yourselves, is the work of equity, empowerment, and actively promoting student success. It is principled work. It is the life's work and advocacy of parents, and it is often the long-term commitment of both staff and organizations such as yourselves. So I offer thanks to you for this commitment, for your advocacy, and for your investment in students. Your work and our work in partnership together is critical and is valued. Thank you. So the first order of business for the committee this evening is the election of chair and vice chair. And I will be running that election process to begin with the chair. These elections, to remind everyone, are for a one-year term. So I will now receive nominations for the position of chair. Please raise your hand if you wish to put forward a motion or a nomination rather. And I'm going to ask Barb Sear, whose hand I see, if you have a nomination to make.
Yes, I would like to nominate Shelley Foster for chair.
Thank you. I received that nomination. And is there a seconder for that nomination? Barb, do you know if there's a seconder for that nomination?
I'll second it.
Okay, sorry, who was that? Was that
Nicole Bucket?
Okay, thank you, Nicole. And Shelley, do you agree to stand for this nomination?
Yes, I agree.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for the position of chair? So I'll wait for an awkward moment just to see if there are other nominations, and feel free to either put up your hand, whether it's in person or in the chat. But I see no other nominations. Just checking one more time again. I see no other nominations. I would like to congratulate Shelley Foster and indicate that she is now acclaimed in the position as chair of SEAC. Congratulations, Shelley. So I'd now like to move on to the selection of a vice chair for the committee, and we'll follow the same process. Is there a member of the committee who would like to make a nomination for the position of vice chair?
This is Shelley, and I'd like to nominate Fauzia.
Fauzia? And is there a seconder for that nomination?
It's Barb Sear. I'll second that nomination.
Thank you. And Fauzia, do you agree to stand for the position of vice chair?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to indicate that, or ask rather, are there any other nominations for position of vice chair? And seeing none, I would like to congratulate Fauzia and indicate that Fauzia is now acclaimed in the position of vice chair. So congratulations and thanks very much to Shelley Foster and to Fauzia for agreeing to take those positions. That was the hard part of the evening for me, and you could tell I was following a script. So I'm happy to turn the chair over, Shelley, to your capable hands to continue on with our agenda this evening with thanks.
And thank you, Ted. Thank you for taking over the chair for me for a few minutes. I really appreciate that. And I'd like to reiterate or again not welcome the new trustees to the Special Education Advisory Committee. This is a wonderful committee, and we discuss the educational needs of and the educational strengths of children with special needs in the board. And it's you learn so much from being on this committee, and we welcome your input, and we look forward to getting to know you and hearing what you can add, what wisdom you can bring to our committee. And welcome back to all the previous members, and we do have a new member from Views. I hope she's on the she's in the lineup today. Yeah, so welcome, parent reps. Welcome back. And we will, Ted, you did forget the approval of the agenda at 1.1, so I will I will start with that, with the approval of the agenda 1.1. Do we have somebody to move for approval of the agenda as it stands? Carol
Barb
Ogilvie?
Sear. I'll move for approval of the agenda.
Okay.
Sorry,
Thank
I
you.
do have a question though.
Yes, you go ahead.
Sorry, and I'm sorry if I was late because I couldn't get in and I had to wait for the link again. A question on the SEAC representatives. Is there any other new representatives being put forward?
I think maybe we'll ask we'll get the answer to that question during during the superintendent's oral report, we'll get a chance to ask that question.
Okay, yeah, because my alternate is on, and so I just want to know what that process is since it's a new term. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Okay, so we've got approval of the agenda. We'll move on to declaration of conflict of interest. Hearing none, I haven't received any questions, although we had a number of questions last committee, which was great. No notices of motions and petitions, and we don't have any delegations. Do we have any public questions, though, with regards to the last meeting? Yes, Paul De Silva, go ahead.
Hi, Shelley, through you. I think there was an updated agenda that was forwarded under section 14.2, draft review of the student census being delivered by the research department. I'm not sure if
that's on here under 14.1 and 14.2.
Okay.
Are on the
what's showing on the screen though is it doesn't have it. Yeah. Okay, just wanted to make sure that there was a 14.2. Appreciate that, Chair.
Yeah, I have the little black control line under going over top of the screen, so I'm looking at the one on my phone, which was sent to me, and yeah, 14.1 and 14.2 are there.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Wonderful. Great. Okay. So I guess we don't, hang on, there's a discussion here. Show the conversation. Oh, and Mary has mentioned that she's unknown user, but we see you as Mary Wright. No public questions then with regards to last meeting. 9, which is reports from officials and staff, and 9.1 is the superintendent report, and that would be Ted Byers. And Ted, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Once again, thank you very much to everyone for being here. For those of you who don't know me, I am a retired superintendent, and I have been for the last couple of months, I guess, returned to do some filling in. So you may be surprised to see me once again this evening. This may be my my swan song in this role. Jennifer Newby, the Superintendent of Special Education and Social Emotional Learning, has returned and will be in attendance at the next meeting, likely. So, but however, it's my pleasure to be here this evening. So for the superintendent's report, yes, in response to Carol's question, I will speak at the end about the makeup of the committee. And certainly, again, once again, welcome new members. But before I do that, I have actually a few things as part of my superintendent's report. I want to speak firstly of the NGAT pilot. And it's my understanding that some mention has been made of the NGAT pilot in previous SEAC meetings. And perhaps there are some committee members who are more familiar than others about the NGAT and the CCAT and achievement tests in general. Those are acronyms we love to throw around in special education. But given that there are some new committee members, and given that there will be a report coming to SEAC in the new year evaluating the NGAT pilot, it makes sense to take some time today, this evening, to provide some context around NGAT and CCAT. So there are two contexts really I want to speak of. One context is the ministry directives, and specifically Directive 14, which directed the board to establish a 4-year action plan to eliminate statistically significant disproportionalities in enrollment, achievement, and outcomes of Black students, other racialized students, and Indigenous students in, among others, in special education programs. And the board's action plan must include actions with measurable outcomes. And a second context is the Peel District School Board's recent gifted review, which identified specific disproportionalities in the composition of our gifted programs, disproportionalities in race and gender, for instance. For example, male students have been overrepresented as compared to female students. Also, Black students have been 4 times less likely to be identified as gifted than their presence in the overall Peel population would predict. And Middle Eastern students have been 3 times less likely. Students who are English language learners have been 7 times less likely to be identified gifted. So gifted students in Peel are more likely to live in areas where the median household is higher, income is higher, sorry, where poverty rates are lower, where rates of home ownership are higher, and where rates of educational attainment are higher. So these are clear and statistically significant disproportionalities that we must address in our action plan. And in this plan, we are testing the hypothesis that the CCAT, so that stands for Canadian Cognitive Abilities Test, we're testing the hypothesis that the CCAT test has actually contributed to the disproportional outcomes for groups of students who identify as Black, African, Caribbean, Indigenous, and that a better screening tool, namely the NGAT, so that stands for Naglieri General Abilities Test, that the NGAT would actually address those inequalities that currently prevent those students from accessing gifted programming. So, to confirm our hypothesis would involve administering both the CCAT and the NGAT tests to a group of students and to compare the outcomes. And that is indeed the pilot that is underway now. The CCAT has been historically administered to all grade 4 students in Peel, and it has also been administered this year, last month, in the same way as in the past. But this year we are piloting the NGAT test in 21 schools where the students will take both tests separated by a couple of weeks. So how did we pick those 21 schools? Knowing that our goal is to reduce disproportionalities in representation, we selected schools with higher proportion of students who identify as Black, African, or Caribbean, schools with a range of social vulnerability index, SVI, we call it for short, with a particular focus on schools with SVI level 5 or 6, that's high, schools geographically distributed across the region, and schools with higher ELL populations. So taking all those factors into account, we identified 21 schools, and those schools would represent about 1,000 grade 4 students, which is about 10% of the overall grade 4 population. And that number, 10%, our statisticians tell us, can provide us with data with a very high degree of confidence. So given the body of research surrounding the NGAT, we are reasonably confident that it will reduce the disproportionalities that are evident in the CCAT. I won't describe in detail the nature of this test, as that will be itemized in the report that will be coming. But suffice to say, the NGAT was designed to remove cultural influences, to allow students to solve problems regardless of the language they speak, and significantly reduce the amount of formal knowledge required. So this test, in other words, will better measure how well students think rather than what students know. Once the results are gathered from both the CCAT and NGAT administrations, our colleagues in research will get hard to work on the analysis. They will apply what we know about student identity in these 21 pilot schools and compare the results from both tests, assessing the extent to which the disproportionalities are reduced. As you can imagine, this analysis must be done carefully and will take some time. We anticipate that a report can be brought to SEAC in March for a response from this committee. So thank you for that long explanation. And certainly at the end of my report, I'll be happy to take questions on that. But there were a couple of other items I wanted to speak to with your indulgence, Chair, and through you. Secondly, this evening, I wanted to speak about a document called Partners in Learning. So this is a Peel Board written document. It was published in 2012 and was a landmark, I will say a landmark in describing how staff groups work together in partnership to support student success. In particular, the partnership described in the title is between educational assistant staff and the academic staff at schools, teachers, and principal. So I'd like to offer a few quotations from this 2012 document that illustrates the vision, which I've called Landmark. Here we go. Teaching assistants play an integral role. So they were called teaching assistants at the time. I call them educational assistants now. Teaching assistants play an integral role with the Peel District School Board. A collaborative and consistent effort is necessary on the part of all staff to utilize this resource effectively. No one person can meet the needs of all students. As schools change, the role of a collaborative teaching team has become increasingly important in supporting the diverse and complex needs of students. Teaching assistants make a vital contribution towards enhancing student success. The most successful schools operate as a team. Team members support and mentor one another. Teams reduce the feeling of isolation. Teams foster professional and personal growth by sharing knowledge and skills and develop unique, creative, and flexible solutions. And this full document, Partners in Learning, identifies the roles and contributions of different staff, certainly educational assistants, the teachers, and principals in a school. So it's a visionary document, but it is 10 years old. And I would like to let this committee know that we will be embarking on a revision of this Partners in Learning document. Certainly this committee probably knows better than anyone the important role that educational assistants play in supporting our students. And they will obviously continue to be an important part of the partnership that I have described. And I imagine that vision that I read out is probably going to be unchanged in this new document. But in the last 10 years, there have been change in the description of staff roles. For instance, this document really made no mention of early childhood educators or DECEs that work in our kindergarten environments, and certainly they need to be included in this document as well. So we will be embarking on a revision of the Partners in Learning document, and sections or maybe the whole document will certainly come to this committee for your comment, since you know, again, the valuable work that this particular staff group makes. We're just at the beginning stages of that review, but I'm happy to announce that it will be underway this year. And thirdly, through you, Chair, I'd like to make mention of an exciting event that has happened recently in the board. It would have been really hyper exciting if we'd had one special guest come, but he was unable to come at the last minute. So it was not hyper exciting, but it was what's just slightly less than hyper, mega exciting. I don't know what the words would be. And I'm making reference to what we call Penny Appeal. So Penny Appeal Canada is an organization that provides support and technology, exciting supports for students in school boards across, not just Peel, school boards across Canada. And we have been a partner for 3 years with this Penny Appeal program. And we just had this mega exciting event last month in the board, at the beginning of this month, rather, last week at the board. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to Coordinating Principal Saira Salman to provide more detail about the event and what it involved. Saira?
Thank you, Superintendent Byers. Through you, Madam Chair. I'd like to share that on December 6th, we welcome Penny Appeal Canada and the PS 43 Foundation. We were the 4th board in the province that Penny Appeal Canada sponsored for a coding championship. They provided laptops to 70 students in our system from grades 9 to grade 12. We selected 70 students from 3 different high schools: Mayfield, Lincoln Alexander, TL Kennedy. The students and staff came over to CBO and they were able to meet, though they didn't meet Pascal Siakam, they did get to meet Mark Strong and Vanessa Siakam, Pascal's sister, and collect their laptops. The students left here excited and with the knowledge that they have the opportunity to engage in a coding program for 6 weeks online on their own time outside of school. So our students will have the opportunity to, in partnership with Canada Learning Code, they will learn the basics of designing their own website, coding with the programming language of HTML and CSS. By the final week, students will have created their own website that includes multiple web pages. Penny Appeal Canada and PDSB is hoping this program might excite a student or two in the future to choose a career pathway in that field. Even if we inspire one child to seek that opportunity, I think it's time well spent. Students will be able to participate, as I said, in a 6-week program at a time and day that works best for their schedule. So Coding for Champions will be using their own educators to support the students throughout the program to differentiate the curriculum for students new to coding and to those who have some previous knowledge. I'm hoping to continue this partnership with Penny Appeal Canada, look for opportunities for our students to seek internship programs and possibly opportunities to make connections to employers that may be able to provide them with new and exciting opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Syra. And through you, Chair, I will end my report this evening with one more topic, which is indeed the question that Carol Ogilvie raised a bit earlier in our meeting this evening about the SEAC committee membership. So later in the agenda this evening, you'll notice that the SEAC brochure, which we spoke about at our last meeting, has been updated, and a new draft can be discussed later in our agenda. But I certainly make reference to that document to show that the committee members have been identified in this new draft of the brochure. There are 11 community organizations that are represented on this SEAC committee, and those 11 organizations remain and are consistent with the 11 that were members of SEAC prior to the end of this sort of cycle. And in a couple of cases, those organizations have indicated a different representative, but for the most part, committee membership is the same as it was previously. There are 3 new board trustees who I introduced at the beginning of this evening, and together those make up the committee. There is one vacancy, which I think the committee has noted previously. Our committee ought to be made up of 12 community agencies. At the moment, there are only 11. So I do want to inform SEAC that in the new year, beginning January, the board will be embarking on a process to call for additional community groups who wish to be represented on SEAC. The decision of which group, if there are multiple, might receive that nomination is a decision that will be made by the board. But we are looking to put out that call in the community in the new year, and hopefully welcome very soon a 12th agency or organization to this committee. And thank you, through you, Chair. That's the end of my superintendent report for this evening. As usual, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee members may have.
Thank you, Ted. Carol, you put up your hand?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Through you, Chair. I was just wondering with regards to the that list of organizations, if the alternates are being included in there too, because I did put our nomination in for our alternate for LDAPR, and it was received.
Yes, we didn't. I mean, that could be some feedback when it comes to the brochure. That's certainly some feedback I'm happy to take away if we want the alternates to be indicated or listed rather in the brochure. But at the moment, it just indicates the representative. But that could be something that committee wishes to discuss when it comes up on the agenda. But certainly, Carol, the alternate has been received both from you and other organizations who provided it, and certainly on our record. So.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Trustee Clark, you put up your hand?
Yes, I have a question about the, I can't remember what you called it, but it was related to CCAT, the plan to branch out into, to go after different members of the community that aren't normally reflected or respected or having their their answers respected. How far along are we in that, and in making actionable, and how long do we anticipate to receive the results?
Thank you for your question, and through you, Chair Foster. Thank you. Yes, we're piloting the NGAT. So yes, SPECIT is filled with acronyms, with apologies. NGAT, Naglieri, Cognitive Abilities Test. So we're piloting that, and in fact, both the CCAT was administered first, and the NGAT after, and both have been administered. So now we're in the data gathering and analysis phase. So again, the NGAT is a much smaller group. The CCAT was done as a board-wide assessment, but we're hoping to be able to have, and I mentioned bringing a report forward to SEAC in March. I hope that we can keep to that timeline, because we want to be able to make a decision on whether or not we're going to keep the SEAC or replace with the NGAT. We're hoping to make that decision so we can implement it for the full board for next year, if possible. So we look forward to the research that that department is going to do to demonstrate our hypothesis that the NGAT test is going to reduce those disproportionalities that I listed in my report about populations that have been significantly underrepresented in the gifted classes, enhanced classes to date.
Yes, thank you. That came up during the election campaign with me personally. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Jennifer Knight?
Yeah, this is about the partnership with Penny Appeal and the coding championships. Just wondering how those 70 students were chosen. Just kind of curious as to where that came from, and hope I didn't miss that.
Sure, I'll turn that question over to Syra, but I think it was 70 or 80 students, but yes, the number of students actually came from Penny Appeal, and it was our job to pick them, but we picked 3 schools, and Syra, I think, can talk too about the way that those schools were selected. This is not the first year we've done it, so we're looking to identify schools with for students who had needs identified by Penny Appeal. We're kind of fitting into the criteria that they identified. Syra, would you like to add more detail to that?
Sure. Thank you, Superintendent Byers. Penny Appeal Canada has had a specific criteria for us. They were looking to reach out to students in our system that were either newcomers to Canada, refugee status, who lived in a lower socioeconomic area. We gathered data from our schools and research department to better understand where we could actually target students of that particular background, and the schools with their administrators, as well as their guidance and their school teachers, in collaboration with our assistive resource technology teachers, identified students who would meet that criteria and who possibly also had some spec ed learning needs and either had an IEP or could benefit from a coding program and expose them to different opportunities. The criteria was given to us by Penny Appeal Canada, and we worked within their framework.
Great, thank you.
And I'm not sure if Syra mentioned the schools. I think you did, but just to remind, I think it was Mayfield Secondary Schools, Mayfield, Lincoln Alexander, and TL Kennedy Secondary Schools, 3.
Correct. Thank you.
Yeah.
Barb, you put up your hand.
Yes, I was wondering if we could possibly get a link or a copy of the Partners in Learning document. I realize you said you're going to be reviewing it, but perhaps it might be helpful to have a look at the current one before we see the revised one.
Through you, Chair. Yes, absolutely. That's easy. I'll have to do that. I'll figure out the best way to do that, but it's a PDF document, so probably easily distributed by email, I think. Thank you.
And
Thank
anybody
you.
else? Anybody else? Then I'd like to thank Ted for stepping in and taking over this position. It was very wonderful for you to show up again. It was a bit of a surprise, and we enjoyed having you. We are looking forward to having Jennifer back, but it was a delight to see you again, Ted, and thank you for helping to create that continuity, or to ease that continuity, and to make sure that things ran smoothly while she was away. So thank you very much for stepping in again.
You're most welcome. Thank you, Chair.
All right. And I did something. I skipped right past the approval of the minutes. So we have to go back there to the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting, which was on November the 9th. And do we have, does anybody have any comments, questions, or changes that need to be made? Hearing none. Fausia, would you like to move for approval of the minutes?
Yes, I would.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then we will move on to communications for action or receipt. This is in section 10, the letter to the Minister of Education from Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board. Does anybody have any questions or comments with regards to this letter? If nobody has any, can I call upon Mary Wright to move for receipt of this letter?
Hello.
You'll move for receipt, Mary? Yes, I think she
Sorry.
did.
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mary. And I'll take this opportunity to thank Mary for being my vice chair for the previous couple of years. We will move to 11, reports from representatives on councils and associations. Do we have any reports? Carol Ogilvie, go ahead.
I did send off an email with a couple of questions. I didn't know if that should be here with the reports or through the questions asked of committee members.
That will be in the next section, number 12.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No reports. Okay. Well, Carol, go ahead. Number 12, questions asked of and by committee members.
Okay. I did send it by email, but I didn't send it to you, Chair Foster, only because I didn't know who the chair was going to be today.
Okay.
So it was sent also to Superintendent Ted Byers too, along with Dainty and Marina. The first item I have is would like to know when SEAC will be provided the orientation training for, especially for the new members, but it also is a good reminder for the current members. This is in respect to the role of the committee and of the board in relation to special education and ministry and board policies relating to special education under Regulation 464 and 97 S10. And also a reminder that a good source of information is the PAC on SEAC. The website is the PAC, PAAC-SEAC.ca, which also has the PAC on SEAC Effective Practices Handbook. So that was my first item.
Okay.
So if we can get a response to that as to when we plan to have an orientation.
I do know that there is some planning going on with regards to that, and there to be some handouts to be made available to present and new members. We are going to be developing some sheets. Yes, Superintendent Byers?
Thank you. And through you, Chair, thank you for that question, Carol. It's important. And as you said earlier, we weren't sure who the chair and vice chair were going to be, and we certainly wanted to work with them on this committee to talk about the learning and orientation. So I anticipate that will begin in earnest in the new year and probably be broken up into different functions. But thank you very much for that question, and I'll be working with Jennifer to talk about what that learning will look like. I do also want to acknowledge and share for everybody the resource pack on SEAC that Carol has referenced. And I'm not sure if you noticed, but in the draft of the SEAC brochure, which is coming up a bit later in our agenda, I actually did put the pack on SEAC website link into that brochure, because it is, as you say, Carol, a great resource for people. I actually we'll talk about it when it comes up, but I put a few links, and the committee can give me some feedback on which links, or maybe all of them, are effective resources for the committee. But it's a really great opportunity. Thank you for the question, to do some learning together as a committee on our effective partnership work together through this year.
Great, thank you. And I do have a second question, and actually it's a little twofold. There have been a couple of ministry updates. The first is school boards are able to deliver the 175 million tutoring supports program until March 31st, 2023. Just would like to know how these funds will be used. And the second item is the ministry committed to taking immediate action to improve student literacy as part of the response to the Ontario Human Rights Commission's Right to Read report. Just wanted to know, how is the board planning to implement the evidence-based effective reading instruction?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So yes, there are two questions there. I spoke at the last meeting about the tutoring supports and the different ways that it was offered. But thank you for these questions, Carolyn. If possible, I'll need to connect with the curriculum department after this meeting and bring forward a response on that one. In fact, on both of your questions to the next meeting, or Jennifer Newby will. They've been coordinating the work in terms of tutoring supports, and also in the Right to Read report. I think, mention at the last meeting in my superintendent's report that there was a Right to Read report that was being brought forward to, so I'm going to confess to being retired and old now. We used to call it the IPC committee, but it's been renamed, and I can't remember the name. Associate Director De Silva will correct me here, but that Right to Read report was brought to that committee, I think, at the beginning of this month. And I think the same report, if the committee wishes, can be brought here to SEAC in the new year, for sure.
That would be great. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, Paul, did you have a response?
Sure, I can just jump in a little bit. The committee, through you, Chair, is called Curriculum, Equity, Student Learning, and Wellbeing Committee, and it met last Thursday. So happy to bring anything forward from the presentation from Right to Read to the next meeting. And I did have a response, because I believe there was a couple of questions outstanding for me to check in on in regards to the tutoring program. And so,
are those in the action and the motion and action log? Are those in the motion and action log?
Perhaps through you, Chair, I could ask if Mr. or Superintendent Byers, are you responding to those in the motion action log, or should I respond at this time?
No, I invite you to respond, Associate Director De Silva. Maybe we can do so when the motion action log comes up in the agenda. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Okay.
That's it for me, Shelley. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Carol, did you have another question?
I just wanted to know if I could introduce my alternate to everyone.
Yes, by all means, introduce your alternate.
All right, thank you. So for the Learning Disabilities Association of Peel Region, we do have an alternate, and her name is Leanne Mallet, and she's actually our executive director. So I would like to introduce her to the committee, as she hopefully will be taking over for me. But I did want to let you know that we do have an alternate, and I did want to introduce her to the committee. And Leanne's on.
Well, welcome, Leanne.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else new? Any other questions? All right. We will move on to the motion and action log, which is 3.1. And I'd like to, yeah, so I know we had a lot of questions last time, and some of the questions that were asked take time away from this. It take time from staff. So I think the committee needs to be aware that when we bring questions into the motion and action log, that some maybe we find an opportunity to condense some of the questions so that we can use our staff, we can use the staff's time efficiently. Just a little nudge there. Ted, I'm going to turn the motion and action log over to you.
Sure, and thank you, Chair, and through you, I'll just, if I can, just thank you for those opening comments. And actually, I would like to invite committee response, in particular on the in relation to the questions, written questions that were received prior to last meeting. So if everyone is looking at their copy of the motion action log, you'll note that that it begins with two, I'll say, large sections, and the date there is November 9th, with 3 questions received from Jennifer Knight. And then right below that, also November 9th, with a series of questions, I think 6 questions received from Barb Sear. So those have been noted as received, questions received. In the log, the questions below that are marked completed November 9th, and there may be some follow-up in a couple of cases, and I know Associate Director De Silva has a couple of follow-up. But that will indicate that response was provided, and you can see that they're marked November 9th, 2022, which was the last meeting when response was provided, and they'll move to a kind of archived list. But I invite the committee, following on what you said there, Chair Foster, I invite the committee to consider what is the mechanism whereby questions that are received from a committee member become items on the motion action log. Some of the questions received would certainly direct or redirect staff work. So I think the committee would need to understand that that would be the case, and to take up the work and responding to some questions would mean that we're not going to do work in other areas. So I invite the committee to discuss and perhaps make a motion on how questions such as those received from Jennifer and Barb would be moved on to the log for action or response by staff. So having said that, there are some questions which were marked for follow-up, and Associate Director De Silva, I think you were going to respond to one of them in terms of the tutoring.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. There was a question previous around what the criteria was used to select the tutoring vendors. So I did reach out to Superintendent Hoppy in curriculum, and his response was that the ministry did provide some criteria. Just a little criteria around who to select, but certainly what the Peel board added was that the supports or the vendors would have to be using Ontario curriculum, that the companies would reside in the geographic location of Peel, and they would have to show an ability to adequately service our Peel students who are very diverse. And a portion of the question then also was around, I believe, accessing the programs. And so many of the, the question was around how many of our students who identified with special needs were accessing the programs. This presented a bit of a challenge in seeking that information from the particular vendors that were providing this to us, so we were unable to get that information from them. However, we were able to ascertain those who resided with Peel, so those who were providing the services inside our schools. We were able to ascertain some of that information. And it turns out that around 600, I believe 637 students who demonstrated or shared that they were on an IEP were serviced in the programs here that were being housed within the schools themselves. So hopefully that helps with some of that information. I know it doesn't help all, but certainly I received as much as I could from that department. Back over
Thank
to you.
you. Yeah, thank you, Associate Director De Silva, and back through you, Chair. Thank you. There may be follow-up for Paul on that question, but if not, I certainly invite the SEAC committee to consider the question that I opened with, which is what is the mechanism, perhaps through motion for the committee, where questions received, particularly questions that would redirect work of staff, would be added to the motion action log and marked pending for response.
Yeah. I think we definitely do need a procedure to yeah, we definitely need some sort of procedure. Barb, you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to say that the reason the action motion log was created is because we would ask questions during SEAC and no one would be getting back to us. So the action motion log was a mechanism of keeping track of questions that we had asked so that everybody would be aware of the questions and we knew that we were waiting for a response on those questions. So it isn't that there are special questions, it's just that if you can't answer the question at the meeting, then it needs to go on the action motion log so it's not forgotten about.
And I think Ted's alluding to the fact that when we consider the amount of time that it might take to compile a report that would encompass questions 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the ones that you sent to us and that we received last time, that would require a considerable amount of time taken specifically answering questions. And is that a fair and equitable use of the board staff time, considering we have 10 other associations represented on the SEAC, and I do believe that the questions are important and they do indicate that there is work to be done and there still is some awareness to be raised, especially amongst SEAC members and perhaps staff members, that there are problems that exist, but it is a lot of data to accumulate. That's just my opinion. I think number 1 and number 2 with regards to the IPRCs, which the IPRC meetings and the IPRC committee memberships, they do affect all the exceptionalities, and maybe that's something that that would be an equitable use of staff time. Barb?
Yes, well, I would agree. I would also think that with regards to the other questions, I would think that the board would be keeping track of the students that drop out, since that would tell you something about whether or not you're meeting the needs of these students. And I would think that the board might also have an interest in how many of their students are committing suicide.
And I agree with
And
you.
for the
These
rest
are
of the questions, if they're
that the
not
board should be
tracking
aware.
them, then we could discuss that.
Yeah, I think it is important that the board be aware of it and be tracking this. Yes, Trustee Clark?
Yes, just a quick suggestion. Perhaps we could just have a simple vote to put something on the tracker and put something on the another question on the back burner to kind of like separate the ones, give priority to some, just to ease the amount of resources necessary.
Perhaps staff could tell us how long it might take to get answers to those questions.
I think that's a fair question.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Instead, I'll just respond to say I don't know how much time it will respond, but I certainly can investigate that and report back to the next meeting with what kind of workload would be involved in gathering data to answer any of those questions. And I'm not, yeah, happy to do that.
Yeah, I think that would help us decide what goes on, what needs attention and what doesn't need attention. Jennifer Knight, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was pretty much going to say the same thing. I think the questions need to be taken back and the board needs to come back and tell us what they can and can't do. Some of these questions on there here to me are straightforward ones that could be answered in a couple of minutes. Obviously, I don't know what it takes to get into it. So you need to come back and say, look, this you asked me this question, it's going to take me a month and a half to do it. Then we can decide whether or not. But there are questions on here also, and questions we have asked in the past, which should be information that's readily available. And it seems to take months and months to get procedures and documents and things that should be available at the tip of your fingers, kind of thing. And I know you got a lot on your plate, but it sort of let's weed through and answer the ones they don't never have to make it onto the agenda, right? And then come back with the ones that can't be answered right away, and let's get them on the tracker. Because it seems to be data is a really tough one to get in this meeting. I don't know where they are now, but there used to be a lot of questions about the data around a lot of special needs things. We were constantly asking for data and information, and it seems to be really tricky to get. So if we get it onto the agenda or onto the tracker, we can find out what it is we need. And over time, it's the same questions coming up often as well. So I guess that's all.
Dorothy Petty?
I'd like to piggyback on that. We should be driven by evidence. Our output should all be the outcome of evidence-based practice. So without the data, we're not informed properly. And it shouldn't be a knee-jerk response. So as far as I'm concerned, I believe it's crucial for us to have data to make informed decisions.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Dorothy. Yeah, data is important, and the outcomes. Yeah, monitoring outcomes of policies and procedures. So yeah, so I guess Ted, what we're asking for is somebody to come back with some information as to how long this would take and how much time to answer all these questions. But some of these questions, I think they are, I agree with Jennifer that that some of them would appear to take their wouldn't take so much time to answer.
Yes, through you, Chair, I'm happy to do that work. And you're right, some of them are easily responded to and some would require more work. And those that would require more work to respond to, I'll see if I can get an estimate that Jennifer Newby can bring as superintendent to the next meeting in January around those more complex questions.
Yes, okay. And with as to regard, I mean, me personally, the IPRC training that members receive, that's an important one. Those IPRC meetings, we tend to hear, we representatives tend to hear from the parents that have gone to them and been negatively impacted by what's happened in them. And yeah, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, still exists out there with regards to IEPs, IPRCs, and SEAC. And the more information we can get out to the parents, to the staff, then the less likely we are to hear about these parents that are being negatively impacted. Jennifer,
thank you.
Sorry, Ted.
No, no apology necessary. I was just going to thank the chair and agree that IPRC is an important process. So we want to be clear about it. And it's more than reasonable to be asking about training for chairs. And certainly it may be a great place to start in reference to our earlier conversation around orientation for SEAC members. It's such a fundamental legislative process. So thank you. Sorry,
Great.
Jennifer.
Jennifer Knight?
So I'm just wondering if we can get sort of a timeline as to the easier questions when we could get answers to them. I mean, there are parents behind these questions a lot of times that are waiting to hear back. So just wondering if we can get timelines on sort of when we might expect to hear back.
Like the bus?
That would be a good one, yeah.
That was a confirmation question, and that seems to be pretty easy to follow up with. Is there only one?
So, Chair, thank you for those questions, Chair, and I'll commit that the ones that can be easily responded to will be addressed at the next meeting in January, and then I'll provide some, or Jennifer will provide some information about work that might be required to, for example, sort of data gathering around some of the more complex ones.
Great. Okay. Jennifer, did you have something else to add?
No, just didn't put my hand down.
Okay. Is there anything else we should be discussing with regards to the action motion log, Ted?
I don't think so, Chair, but I certainly invite committee members to review those ones that have been marked as completed. Those were you get sort of a summary of the response that I provided at the last meeting. And as you know, there was some question and discussion about some of them. By all means, if there is follow-up, either at this meeting or a future meeting, there's no reason why that couldn't be probed into, such as we did around tutoring. But otherwise, I would say that they'll be moved from this log to kind of a completed or archived version, so that the motion action log will just keep the ones that are current, and pending. Yeah.
So we keep them on for a couple months in case anything else comes up, and then move them off. Yeah. Yep. Jennifer, did you have something else?
Yes. So item from December 13th, 2021, regarding, again, data collection. So we're closing this based on the fact that we're working on making it better, and we'll bring a report back in a future SEAC meeting. That to me is not completed. It needs to remain on there so that we are aware, along with whatever was asked there for specific data. That's really a challenge we have at this meeting, and have for the number of years that I've been on this, is that there is no data to drive what we're doing here, or we're not getting. I don't know if it doesn't exist or we're just not getting it, but to close that to me doesn't close that action, to say that we're working on it and we'll bring a report at a future meeting. To me, that doesn't go off the list with that. And maybe I'm wrong. We could ask the rest of the group. That's not closure to me.
Yeah, I think you're right that if it's going to be brought back to a future meeting, it needs to remain on. And the January 18th, 2022 updating information in CF brochure item 10 of these minutes. So because the CF brochure is still being updated, maybe we should keep that one on too. Right. Yeah. We do. So we have had. I mean, with regards to the CCAT and the NGAT, we are receiving updates regularly with regards to those. I don't. Dorothy, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I'm still piggybacking on where Jennifer, the information that Jennifer is conveying, in that we have to be data driven. Anything that requires stats, anything that gives us greater depth of understanding regarding our decision making, it has to be there. So that should be an ongoing action. It shouldn't be removed. We have to be evidence-based to make an informed decision. So that has to stay on, in my opinion.
Okay. So with regards to the hands, it's oh, there it's gone. Okay. Anybody else? Trying to look for the hands. Sorry.
It's Jennifer again. I still have my hand up for a reason this
Okay.
time. So, and maybe I missed it. I did miss a meeting, but the other action item that's being closed that I have a bit of a problem with is September 20th, 22, the follow-up regarding the review of the accessibility plan. Did we actually get some representation on that working group? I think last time I remember, it was still kind of up in the air as to whether SEAC was going to be a part of that group, how that was going to work, what the steps were going on with that.
Through you, Chair. At the last meeting, I did bring forward, when I was responding to this item, information from Abilities and Candace Nemeth, and I'm just sort of trying to find my notes from that meeting, but I know that she was talking about a process that's in development for the next cycle. And I certainly surfaced the question to her about SEAC interesting in having representation in that group, but the composition had not yet been determined, from my understanding. We can, if you wish, if the committee wishes, any number of these items can remain on for follow-up. So that can be a committee decision to recommend that certain items are incomplete, in fact, and should stay on.
So maybe we change completed to partially completed? It was answered, but there is more work to be done. And that way they're not, unless the question is closed, unless the question is fully answered and and can be answered, then it remains on.
Sure, I've made notes in my notes that this item that Jennifer's asked about, the accessibility plan from September 20, 2022, should remain on. And likewise, the one on data, which is from December 13th, 2021, second last one, should also remain on. Certainly in that last one, it would help me and Jennifer Newby to understand that more specifically data, because the question as it's worded is quite general. I do know, and this is going back to my day as superintendent of special education, we struggled to pull non-identified numbers, data numbers from the system, and had to do that collection manually. That's going back 4 or 5 years now. What has changed is that it's no longer a manual process. and that we can gather data on non-identified student service type, is what we call it, electronically from SIS. So that's why I think I marked that question completed, because I was responding to that specific question about identified versus non-identified data collection, which we have resolved. But there may be larger questions or data questions, and again, it would help me and staff specifically to understand the kind of data that is being sought by the committee.
I think
but through your chair, we can certainly leave those 2 items on, and there may be others that the committee wishes to leave on. I follow your direction in this matter, and we can leave them on, and the committee members can be thinking about the different data sources, for example, that you might wish to inquire about. And again, obviously, further deeper questions around the accessibility plan. So if you're comfortable with that, we can leave those 2 items on.
So, and maybe keeping the questions a little bit, instead of being condensed, keeping them a little bit more fuller in the action motion log, like they are represented in the ones we received from Barb and Jennifer. Maybe keep them a little bit more robust until we've answered them completely, instead of putting down a synopsis of the question. And that way we're not looking at this months down the road going, what was the data we were asking for? Because I think sometimes we get confused. A number of SEAC meetings have passed, the question hasn't been answered. We too get confused. Well, what exactly was the data that was being asked for? Jennifer?
Yeah. I think we can probably go back through the minutes and find those actual questions. I know I have a few that are still outstanding that were asked in meetings, so that's something we could probably drag through and find out because I think what happened is, because they were not available, it all kind of got lumped in, and a lot of them were asked maybe before we started this action motion log. So there was constantly data being asked for, nothing ever happening, and this became more of a general one. I'm not sure how it actually came to be, but I'm sure that by going back through minutes, we could find the actual questions that were asked, or each member could bring forth what they were looking for.
Paul, you had your hand up?
Yes, thanks, Shelley. Through you. Yeah, through you, Shelley. Yeah, just trying to get my head around the questions and how we can be more productive and responsive. And I'm just wondering if during the meetings, the committee could decide which ones were the most relevant to then surface. If we get written questions that are asking for data after data, we could potentially have a number of people asking a number of different questions that would literally consume the research department's time. I know Lynn is going to be doing a presentation for us later today about student census, and she has provided, and the department themselves have really developed a comprehensive data set, our equity accountability report card in response to the ministry directives, where there's lots of information and data in there that potentially could be very helpful to the committee, that could be surfaced here or revisited, if you will. But I'm just thinking about in terms of the committee, if they are asking for data sets, if the committee could decide which 1 or 2 pieces that they would like for the following month. Otherwise, it's going to be a long list that potentially we can't get to, because we are, and the research department and so on is accessing. The other pieces like the bus and all of that, there's no question we can get those responses in a timely manner. But the ones that are more meaty and that would have to enable an entire department to dissect and to extract that data, that is time consuming, and perhaps it's already embedded in other data sets that could be provided. So perhaps we could chunk them during the committee meeting, or because if they're all sent in as written requests, there could be, you know, 4 or 5 different requests by 4 or 5 different members that then would then build an enormous amount of work that potentially we couldn't get to because we are doing the work of the board as well, other pieces. So I just offer that, and then perhaps Lynn could even share some information when it's her time. But I think we need to be strategic in the data that we want. We want to get that information out to you, but if it resides elsewhere, that might be even an opportunity to surface at it at this time.
I saw Carol's hand go up, and Jennifer's hand is up too.
I just want to make a comment with regards to the data. I think knowing how long some of our members have been on this committee, I would making an assumption, and I really shouldn't be making assumptions, but I am, with the fact that the board would know what the committee is asking for each time when it comes to data. So I would be hoping that when reports are being put together, that CEC is put in mind with regards to the types of data that we're looking for, so that we don't even actually need to keep on asking for it.
Yes, Carol? Oh, sorry, Jennifer?
Yeah, I was just I agree with Carol. That's actually a really good point with all the questions that have been asked in the past. And hopefully the report we see today reflects that. We'll see the stuff that we've been asking for in the past. That would be great. And I was just going to say, Paul, I agree. We can't just ask for all the data in the world. Typically, we are following on to a report or something that's been presented to us and asking for a little bit more information. If that is really hard to get, you need to let us know, because we're assuming that you can go back to that same report, pull that out and send it to us. We just need that feedback. We're not looking to put you guys to work doing data, 24/7. It's typically we'll get some information and want to just dig a little bit deeper, maybe for our group, maybe for everybody. So if you can come back to us and say, you know what, that's a whole new report, a whole new set of data, understandable. But if it's something that already exists and you just need to pull it out, then that would be great if we could get that by the next meeting.
Paul?
Yeah, that's great. That's exactly what we wanted to hear, and that's I think we're on the same page. And I think streamlining it and kind of congregating the data that you really want. And if it's already in a report, that's great. We can pull that out pretty quickly, and then we'll be honest if it's going to take 4 or 5 hands to get that data together, and what kind of length of time that's going to be required to do so. But yeah, for sure, we'll let you know. That makes sense.
I think we've. What do you think? If we had a good discussion with regards to this, I think we'll get. We're not expecting right now a response to all the data questions, and maybe you're going to get back to us with regards to how much time that would actually take, and we'll just. But it does, like Carol has said, and it does show you, it does give you a good idea of the kinds of information that we like to receive, and when you're doing your reports that you do present to us, that you keep these questions in mind. Okay, so do we move for receipt of that then? Ted?
Yes, through you, Chair. We need a motion for receipt. Thank you.
So, Carol, would you like to move for receipt? Oh, Trustee Clark, would you like to move for receipt? He's pointing at me and he's on mute.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are going to, I'm sorry, I'm scrolling up through my agenda. We're going to move on to the staff-led consultation, and the first one is 14.1, the CEC brochure, the draft, and I know we're going to have a little bit. We've already had an email from Barb as to an addition to the draft. So Ted, would you like to lead this?
Absolutely, through you, Chair. Happy to. Oh, thank you for putting it on the screen. Happy to receive feedback on this. So you're looking on your screen at. So obviously, this is you've seen this before, like a back to front brochure that's folded. So on the right hand side of your screen is the front cover. And I do point out at the bottom, you'll see the email address, siak@plsb, which we created some years ago, in fact, during my time, but we've put in brackets doesn't exist. So obviously those words won't appear on the final version, just to let the committee know that that email address does not exist anymore. So we can talk about at this committee a mechanism for reaching out for forwarding questions. But the rest of the text has been reviewed and remains in place. And on the left-hand side of your screen is the list of 3 trustees on SEAC, as well as Paul and Jennifer's information. And then Mark, if you can just scroll to the other, what will be the inside, there we go, of the pamphlet. On the left-hand side of your screen, the links there, and Mark, if you can scroll up just a little bit. No, the other way. Sorry, down one, up, yeah, there we go. So on the left, the links that appear in blue have all been tested, so they all do work. And on the left at the very bottom, you'll see 3 websites that talk about the role of SEAC committees. The first being the Ontario government page, the second, the PAC on SEAC website, and then thirdly, our own Peel board page on Special Education Advisory Committee. But all those links work on the left. On the right-hand side, you'll see the list of the delegates. And I know from past, we had discussion at this committee about whether you'd like your email address there, whether you want your phone number there or not. So we've just printed what we had, but certainly happy to receive feedback on what would appear in this pamphlet or brochure, because obviously it, when printed, would be distributed to people who would therefore have that contact information. So again, happy to receive comments and feedback on this draft.
Barb, you had an addition?
Yes. Regarding the links, Ted, while the links all go somewhere, they don't necessarily go someplace useful. The ontario.ca/page Special Education Advisory Committee goes to a link that says, and where I just opened it, it says, "We're sorry, but we can't find this page."
What? Okay,
That's
I need
where
to
it
check
goes.
that again. Apologies, I thought we had checked all of those before. There you go. There you go. Well, you learned about the mallard there. Okay, apologies, I thought that was checked. Thank you for noting that. I need to
And
correct that.
also the special education page on the Peel District School Board website goes to a page that says somewhere near down the bottom, click here for more information on special education. And when you click on it, it just takes you back to that same page.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that we should get that SEAC email working if it's possible, so that we just have a general one that can be used. And then Shelley can check it once a week or something, or maybe between Shelley and Fazia, they can check it, or maybe there's a couple other SEAC members who would take responsibility for checking it.
The problem with the SEAC email was the darn passwords. The passwords were difficult for me to remember, and they kept on changing them. I forget how often they had to change them. It was like every 3 or 6 months they were changing, and it was a little overwhelming for me in my brain. Can you not? Also, I'd like to mention that my phone number is wrong. It's not 646, it's 647. And my email isn't in blue. I don't know why. And yes, so if we're gonna have me there, It would be nice if my telephone number was correct. And
Okay,
maybe we put in
noted.
brackets, will receive texts. I don't know. Jennifer Knight?
Yeah, typically with Easter Seals, we put the Easter Seals Ontario website and number, so I can send that information in.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Putting the links to the individual the individual organizations is actually quite a great idea. That's a great idea.
I take my personal one out and I give the one for the actual association, and then they filter through. They do what they can. They pass on to me. So
yeah,
it's an instead of for me.
Perhaps I can invite committee members to just let me know or Dainty know either by email if there are changes to your personal information. I see, Fozia, thank you for your note in the chat, which I've taken a reference to. But if you think of something, by all means, let me know. I don't know if there are more general comments about the format and the content. I'll certainly look into the links. Thank you for that feedback, Barb.
Yeah, there was a statement.
Barb did send an email, right?
Yeah, there was a statement that we wanted to add. I'm just looking to see if I can find it. Okay, here it is. SEAC members and associations are available to assist parents, guardians, and provide information and make recommendations. Parents are encouraged to contact the local association or the SEAC members that best represent the special needs of their child, or some such similar statement we could put on it.
Okay. Thank you. Have you sent that, Barb? Sorry, through you,
No,
Chair.
I
Have you
can
sent
send
that?
that
No.
to you. I can
Okay.
send that to you if you like.
Perfect.
Jennifer, do you have something?
Nope, just forgot to put my hand down.
Anybody else? You have something in? No? Carol?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment with regards to the password changes. Unfortunately, for security reasons, that's why it has to be done every 3 months. And depending on what the board's policies are on that. So if there's another way that we can still keep that email address, because that is a good way for parents to get a hold of SEAC if needed.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I'll see if I can understand what the options are regarding that email address. I think one of the challenges is it's appeal board internal email address, and there would be external people accessing it. So I suspect that's one of the barriers, potentially security. But I'll see if I can find out information and bring it back, or Jennifer can, to the next meeting.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was one of the ones that was privileged to the password changes, and I have to admit, my darling ADHD brain could not keep them. I have a hard enough time with my own passwords. So yeah, if we have some options, that would be great. Oh, so do we move for receipt of that then? I think we move for receipt of that. I think we've got. We're gonna send Ted some if we need to change anything specific. We send Ted that information, and otherwise it's going to be, we're going to get another change made to it. It's going to be brought to the committee next meeting, and hopefully everything will work. All the links will work, and everybody will be happy with the changes, and we'll be able to get that out and published.
If nobody else objects, I move that, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Trustee Clark.
Yeah. If
Great.
no one has any objections, then yeah, I'll move it.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to, the next one. Which means I have to go back, which is 14.2, the draft student census and climate survey. And that's going to be an oral report done by Lynn Hollingshead. And Paul, did you want to introduce her, or do you just want to go ahead, Lynn?
Sure, I can introduce Lynn. It's my pleasure to introduce Lynn. So through you, Chair, Lynn is our lead in our innovation and research department, and she's been a busy little beaver doing all sorts of research across the system. That's why I spoke up earlier, just around the immense amount of work that she is engaging with in regards to many of the directives and all of the other requests coming from departments as well as even individual schools to access. And she is definitely a benefit to the board, and happily introduce Lynn and Malak. And I think maybe I'll turn it over to Lynn to introduce Malak, as she is here supporting as well.
Thank you, Associate Director De Silva, and through you, Chair. I'd like to introduce both Malak Askar and Spajmai Aksir, who are both researchers on my team. We are a small but mighty team that are very busy, and I could never do this work alone. So I'm very grateful for the work of the team. It's a group effort. Tonight, my colleagues will be taking notes on your comments and questions and feedback, so we hope to hear lots from you. I'm going to start with a bit of a presentation to tell you about our plans for this upcoming census climate survey, as well as we have brought a few questions from the survey, the draft survey. We're in development of the survey at this time, and we would like your feedback input on those questions. So first, the survey itself. So this survey is going to ask our students about themselves, their identity, their school experiences, and their overall well-being. There will be several different types of surveys to suit the different groups of students. For students in kindergarten to grade 3, we're going to be asking the parents or caregivers to fill out the survey on behalf of their student. Hopefully, we'll encourage families to have their student participate in the completion of the survey. For students in grades 4 to 6, they will complete a survey designed for that age group, and it will be completed during school time. And then for students in grades 7 to 12, they will fill out a survey that's designed for that age group, and it also will be completed during school time. We'll also be designing an adjusted or a shorter survey for students with special education needs, and that survey will be provided upon request. Next slide, please. School boards are mandated to collect census and climate data as per the following legislation: the Education Act, the Anti-Racism Act, and the Equity Action Plan. The survey, the data that we collect through the survey helps us to better understand all student populations and school communities in Peel, identify and eliminate barriers to student success, inclusion, and well-being, eliminate systemic racism and discrimination, and establish effective programs and reallocate resources to where they are needed most. Next slide, please. We're also guided by the legislation to ensure personal information is protected as per the MFIPA, or the Municipal Freedom of Information and and Protection of Privacy Act. And so we will therefore obtain consent from all students and families to participate in this survey, ensure that all data will be stored securely and accessible only by the research team, ensure all participation is voluntary and participants know that they can withdraw at any time, ensure all participants are informed of their right to withdraw their data at any time, at which stage their data will be withdrawn and excluded from further use, ensure all participants understand no services will be withheld if they decide to not participate in the survey, to skip parts, to decline participation, or if they withdraw their data. And that we would retain the information for only 5 years. After this time, the data would be destroyed and deleted. Next slide, please. The survey, we conducted the survey, a census survey in 2018, and so this is our second time around at Peel. This time we're going to be using an online survey software called Qualtrics. It's a high-end survey tool with a lot of security and a lot of function. We're confident with the service that they provide. The data will belong to Peel. There's no concern that Qualtrics will try to take over the data, etc. Students will be invited to complete the survey online, parents as well. We will also be offering paper copies upon request or upon identified need. Next slide, please. You'll be happy to know that we've done some preliminary testing with Google Read and Write, and we're confident that it will be useful for students who already use it. We will continue to work with the technology teachers in special education to ensure that the surveys that the final versions of the surveys are accessible through the use of Google Read and Write. As I mentioned earlier, a simplified version of the survey will also be made available upon request. And also we'll be translating the surveys into 10 additional languages based on the most commonly used languages in Peel. Next slide. The survey timelines, we'll be beginning our communication with students, families, and community in April, and working on that through, in February, working on that through to April. We'll be, garnering interest and excitement, as well as ensuring that families have a clear opportunity to opt out of the survey, as well as and making sure that the schools are well prepared for the actual administration. The launch of the survey is set for April 11th and will formally close on May 5th. Next slide, please. These are the themes that we are working with in the survey development. The team drafted the survey, and then we've been engaged in internal consultations with the departments across PDSB. So we're looking at questions about me, about my family, about my well-being, my school, my relationships with staff, my school experiences, my learning, my extracurricular activities, my pathway, and then a question about the survey itself. So that's the sort of the introduction to the survey. If we want to stop and if you have any questions thus far, and then the second part, we'll look at the actual questions we've brought for feedback.
So are you looking for feedback with regards to what exactly are you, or are you going to show us the questions?
I will show you the questions. I just want to make sure that there weren't any questions in what I had shared thus far, or if there were any questions about the accommodations, the delivery, anything like that before we got to the actual specific questions in the survey.
Jennifer Knight has her hand up, but I'd like to make a comment about the, can we go up? There was something about the shorter version being available upon request. Is it only available upon request to those students receiving special education supports, or can it be available to all to students who just ask for a shorter version?
That's an interesting question. Could you tell me more about that? I'm happy to entertain that idea.
I'm just thinking some students who may not be receiving supports may still consider that questionnaire too lengthy, and may even though you don't require them to answer all the questions, maybe you would they would be more likely to complete a shorter version.
Okay, sure. Another point that I didn't make is that because of the way the survey is being delivered, it could be completed in multiple sittings, and the information would be there where they left off the last time they were answering questions. So both options are could potentially be there.
I think as long as it the teachers are aware that it is available upon request, and not necessarily just for students who have who are receiving special education supports.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jennifer Knight.
So I'm glad to see that you guys spent some time on the accommodations. I appreciate that. I know we had some challenges during the last census, so that's great. Just a couple of questions around that. One of my first questions before you mentioned was read and write for Google. So that's fantastic. You've worked that in. How are you going to handle privacy for students who are using Google Read and Write? Some of these questions are somewhat private information. So if someone is using Google Read and Write or any kind of dictation software or something like that, how are we ensuring the privacy of those students?
Thank you for that question, through you, Chair. That's a really good question, and something that I will need to take back to the team, along with like special education department, to consult on how best to support students. An excellent question, hadn't considered.
Second one, you talked about destroying the data after 5 years. So it looks like we're coming up on our previous census data is going to be destroyed. Are we thinking about what information we want to pull from? I'm assuming you have to destroy the data, but you can keep reports that don't point out any specifics. Is that correct?
Correct.
So are we working on figuring out what we want out of that data right now, because we're about to have to destroy it next year?
Well, we'll be very happy to have our new set of data, so we will be less concerned. But it is a question on my mind as to how do we sustain information that in order to keep some history about student experience.
Yeah, I think we would want to see that if anything we've done over the past 5 years have made any changes, right? So we want to have that data to be able to compare. That's all I'm thinking.
Agreed. And hopefully our reports, if we can be consistent on how we report, will help in that.
Yeah. One more question. Again, Shelley was talking about the simplified version. Is there not a way to create from the ground up something that's accessible to everyone instead of having separate versions? Like we tend to we build it for the main group, and then we do these offshoots for others. Is there not a way to make a census that everyone has access to equally?
That's an interesting question. I mean, even between grades 4 to 6 and 7 to 12 would be different, because we have different audiences. For example, the sexual orientation question would not be asked for students in grades 4 to 6. There might be questions that are being asked in the 7 to 12, and I can't speak off the top of my mind, that may not be relevant to some students. I'm not sure.
Okay. It's just a thought, a process I think we need to do more of, is kind of like, let's look at everybody and try and make it work, as opposed to looking at, the 80% and then trying to fit in the 20.
Right, and you'll see right away when I have Mark move to the next slide that the length of the definition is quite lengthy, and maybe that alone is a problem. But then, what do we remove?
Right. So where is this going to be? Sorry, this.
So this will be an introduction to the disability question. So this would be the paragraph prior to the first big question about disabilities. And so we welcome your feedback. this might not be an easy venue to do this in, and so we'll need to maybe think about how we might share this information in a way that you can give us more detailed feedback.
Yeah, I think having this on paper and having a chance to go through it, we could give better feedback.
This is quite lengthy, like this, editing that is not simple. But do you see the challenge now that we face? What is it that would we want to take out in order to simplify the language and yet not reduce the depth of information that's being offered?
I think sometimes you need to offer more information, because sometimes there will be something in this description that makes sense finally to somebody who's having a hard time figuring out in their head. So there may be parts of it that they understand. So sometimes having more information is actually better, because it gives you more opportunities to find the parts that you understand. Trustee Clark, you still have your hand up. Did you want to add something? And if you want to add something.
Yeah, it was a question about the data. When somebody rescinds their you know the questions, you know, the data, what happens to that data? Does it stay around until 5 years before it gets deleted?
No, why the language was a little bit, it didn't sound like we were deleting it. It is because the data, if it had been used in a report already, we wouldn't be going back and recalculating those statistics. The data would be deleted and discontinued, but it still exists in previous forms in which the data had been used.
Okay, thanks.
It might make more sense when you actually see the report. It's a rather interesting report, and a number of us have seen the first report. So yes, I'm curious about the questions.
Okay, so can we move to the next slide then? And this is the first question. Any feedback?
That behavioral disability, that it's really quite vague, isn't it?
It was something we wondered about ourselves, so we welcome your input.
What do we mean by about behavioral disability? What exactly are we? Who are we expecting to click that box? I guess that's my question. Like the rest of these, I'm going to be honest. I don't see ADHD on here. Oh, there it is. Attention deficit up at the top. Yeah, sorry, that's my ADHD. Yeah, I'm still confused about this behavior one. Trustee Clark?
Yeah, maybe we could change it to social anxiety or some sort of, you know, try to fine tune it, because again, I have ADHD and it's not a behavior, it's neurological. Okay, so yeah, I kind of feel that I'm not sure where that, you know, where that came from in terms of putting it into here. So.
What, you mean putting ADHD as a disability?
No, putting behavioral as
yeah.
making that like, you know, it's yeah. So I'm just questioning that the reason why that was chosen as opposed to it, trying to communicate. I'm not even sure what they're trying to communicate. That was, yeah.
So it is one of the formal definitions from the ministry, correct?
Yeah,
It
so
is, but
through you, Chair. Yeah, it's one of the 5 categories of exceptionalities outlined in the Education Act.
Okay.
Yeah.
but
Okay.
but
But
what kind of disabilities fall under that particular?
it is on its own as a just behavioral identification. To go further from what Paula said, yes, it's one of the 5, but the others, some of them are represented here and some are not. So this list is a mixture of ministry identifications, but also diagnoses too. So that's why the items probably feel different from each other.
Fauzia has put her hand up a couple times. Fauzia?
I was just wondering. I was also confused about behavioral. Is it like something like ODD, oppositional defiance disorder? Because just behavioral sounds so vague.
Carol, you have something to add to that?
I'm just wondering if maybe if we have to keep the word behavioral, maybe provide a couple examples of what it may contain. Because then usually if you have like keywords, it might trigger somebody to say, oh, yes, this is what it is. And also with the actual question itself, I sort of have an issue with the first part of it. I'm just wondering if we could say, do you consider yourself to be a person who experiences a disability? Brackets IES. I think it's the wording in there I'm having difficulty with.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you consider yourself to be a person who experiences a disability? Bracket IES.
Instead of a person experiencing.
Yeah.
Okay.
We captured that. Thank you.
Dorothy, you have something?
Yes, typically individuals that's diagnosed with FAS, the challenges, some of the characteristics that's present is behavioral. And so with that said, I understand behavioral being identified there because it is a brain-based disability, but it is displayed in behavioral issues. So just to answer some of your questions.
I would argue a lot of there are other disabilities here which
I concur.
are also have behavioral.
I concur. But
manifestation.
In speaking to the FAS community, what you will see is high behavioral issues.
So the FAS community would check behavioral.
Oh yeah.
So they would understand what that meant.
Absolutely.
So we are capturing.
It's not
it.
defined just as that, as Archie Kwan had spoken about a year or two ago. There are different pillars. It's a brain-based disability, but it's shown in that manner.
Okay.
So one of the goals that we aim for when we're developing a question is to try and make sure that a student sees themselves in the question without too much struggle. And so the question for me is, knowing that some students have a formal identification of behavioral, might they know that identification and wonder why it's not on the list?
That's a good question. Yeah.
I would say that more times than not, the parents or the caregivers of the individuals that's diagnosed with FAS would be able to easily make that identification with the presentation of their child or loved one when they see that as a category. And again, it's not behavioral is not it in its a full totality, but definitely that is a marker for both parents, caregivers, and service providers alike.
Barb?
Yes, I was wondering if Tourette's syndrome might fall under behavioral.
That, and through you, Chair, is an example of the challenge sometimes in mixing diagnoses and identifications on a page like this. There are some identifications that don't appear here, like communications is a category under which some identifications fall, but it's not there as a broad category, and yet physical is and behavioral is. So yeah.
Well, maybe we could put them as an example.
Yeah.
So we're wondering what might be behavioral. Maybe we could put some examples.
Sure. Yeah, so FAS and
Yeah, FAS is tricky as Dorothy knows too, because often historically was identified behavioral almost as a default, but more recently, as Dorothy has described, it's recognized to be much more complex and as a spectrum of and often students have multiple identifications, so the word multiple isn't there, but it could be behavior and other yeah.
So this is a multi-select question, so individuals could pick more than one.
So what if they have one that they identify with but not on here?
There is any disabilities not listed above, please specify.
Okay, yeah, again my sorry, my bar goes right over top of that. So good to know.
It's a long way down.
Okay. Okay. I guess you've heard our input.
All right, so shall we move to the next one? This was the hardest.
Okay.
So the next two are similar. This one is about what other students are saying, and there's a number of identities listed. And are you okay with what we've offered here?
Why have we combined mental and physical ability together?
It's a good question.
To me, those are two different things.
They are.
And I would feel offended if I was one that. Yeah. Students access. What's underneath? Sorry, my bar. I see students accents, and then I don't see what's under the last one. What is that?
Religion, like Islamophobia and anti-Semitism.
Oh, okay.
The next slide is a identical question, but it's about the adults in the schools saying negative comments.
Jennifer Knight just put up her hand. Jennifer?
Yeah, it was for the previous page, and I wondered if, and now that I see this, I'm not sure if my comment, I think it does. Does students even need to be there? on all those statements? Can it just be, because it could be about a teacher, it could be about a student, it could be about, well, I guess that's, someone who works in the school, that they could be commenting about those things. And plus, I find it very confused. The students at the front distracts me. I don't know why. If you just had like a list, body size, mental and physical, that kind of thing, I think it might be clearer. And thanks, Shelley. I agree about the mental and physical being separated.
Thank you. That's a good point.
Trustee Clark?
Yes, under students' religion, perhaps you could also add or lack of religion or non-religion, however to define that. Thanks.
Are you ready to move on to the next one?
I'm just wondering if we give an opportunity to specify with regards to race, ethnicity, or culture, we give an opportunity, because this is again, this is a big, this is a huge topic. I don't know. I'll think about it. Well, yeah. Well, we go. Yeah, let's move on. Sorry.
Okay. So the next slide. Asked in a different way.
Okay. Why do we have in brackets like I don't have the adjustments I need?
So this is instead of in EG or IE, it was to be student-friendly language.
Oh my
God. Okay.
Okay.
I just want to go backwards one. Look, we're on slide 14. Oh, no, you backed up. Okay. So I'm satisfied with how my school has addressed, taken action on, check all that apply: student bullying incidents, staff bullying incidents, racism, homophobia, and other discrimination related to sexual orientation, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and other religious discrimination, ableism, transphobia, and sexism.
What if they're not satisfied? How is that going to be?
They wouldn't check anything.
But what if? Okay, that's assuming that. Then is that assuming that the incident has occurred in the school?
Good question.
I would say you have one I am satisfied with and I am not satisfied with. That gives them the opportunity to point out what's been happening in their school and has been dealt with well, and what's happening in their school and what has not been dealt with well.
Right, and then and blank means that I have no comment.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines, and I don't think blank is no comment. I think you have a haven't experienced this or don't know. So you have the three boxes: doing well, not doing well, don't know, sort of.
I like that. Yeah,
and that would give you the information about. It'd give you also how they're handling it and how often it's handling, sort of, or how often it's happening, sort of.
Yep. Thank you.
So, can I ask a question about a question?
Yes.
With regards to gender, last year you had male, female, and then you had, I think you had other.
Yes.
Has non-binary been added?
We have a much better question proposed at this time.
That's
It's
much more
quite lengthy.
inclusive.
Yes, it's much more. It's much more lengthy. Which of the following best describes your gender or identity? Select all that apply. Boy, man, gender fluid, gender non-conforming, girl, woman, intersex, non-binary, questioning, transgender, two-spirit, which is under consideration. And then I would like to specify gender identity. I'm not sure what this question is asking. I prefer not to answer.
I'm happy those changes were made.
Okay.
Jennifer, you still have your hand up? No? Okay.
Next slide, please.
I see nobody's hands up. I think
We missed anything?
Jennifer?
So I'm still thinking this through, but under language, I think we need to consider AAC users. When you're saying, it's just about learning English. They're not necessarily learning English, they're using technology. You have technology up there, but I'm thinking AAC users, how does that fit in?
So how would we ask that question so students would understand?
I'm working on that.
Because I don't know what AAC stands for, so.
So it's someone who uses technology to speak.
Right.
They use a computer for their voice.
Right.
So it's not necessarily that they need the support in English, but maybe that falls under the technology.
Or a negative attitude.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe it's not. Okay, let me think on that one.
Okay.
I don't see anybody else's hand up.
Okay, so next question. Next slide. At the school, I have opportunities. Next slide. Yes. Two, and then the options are strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree, or not sure. And then for each question, they have that opportunity to answer. Set goals for my learning and follow through on these goals. Show what I have learned in different ways. Understand my learning needs. Receive feedback on my schoolwork from teachers. Receive feedback on my schoolwork from my classmates. Share my thoughts about how I learn best. Use feedback to improve my work and give input about what I learn in my class, like topics we study, books we read, etc.
Jennifer?
Sorry to be a pain. What's the goal of this question?
It's about opportunities to demonstrate my learning. So it's really an assessment, classroom assessment question. So am I setting goals in my learning? Am I having opportunities in different ways to show my learning? Do I understand how I learn? Are my teachers helping me understand how I learn myself? Am I receiving feedback, which is a part of the assessment process in the classroom? Do I get to express how I learn best? Do I get input on how I learn best in the classroom? The student
the
with
goal
an
to find
IE.
out how we're doing as a school in the classroom on these things. Is that kind of the, because the sense is it didn't have questions sort of like this before. It was more about the student population. This
Right.
looks to me more like.
This is a climate survey. This is a combination census climate survey. So this is a climate question, and it is about classroom assessment. And assessment is the key to learning, right? So if I have access to instruction, I also need to have access to demonstrating my learning and learning from my learning. So these questions are really trying to unpack the assessment side of the learning.
And then are we going to kind of correlate that to different groups and try and understand if different group, okay, now it makes sense. Now you're going to take the special needs kids and see if they are feeling the same way as kids who are in there. Okay, got it. Sorry, thank you.
No, that's okay.
Barb, you had your hand up, or sorry, Carol had her hand up next, and then we'll move to Barb. Carol?
So a question regarding this. So you're saying strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree, and not sure. How do they go about selecting for each of these items here? Because it's like a checkbox, but.
Right, well, no, this is just displayed in a way for us to develop our questions. So when it goes into the survey form, it'll be set up so that they have the strongly agree, etc. for each question.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And we're going to have to work at how best that works with something like Google Read and Write. So that will be our priority, is to display this in ways that Google Read and Write makes sense. When it reads it.
Sorry.
Can we ask the students if they are engaged in learning in the classroom, or if they're actually learning in the classroom? Because some gifted kids complain that they never learn anything at school.
Okay, we're jotting that down to take back. Thank you.
Okay, no other hands are up.
Okay, next question, next slide. In your school, how often have you learned about the experiences and or achievements of, and this time the scale is all the time, often, sometimes, rarely, never, not sure. So how often are they learning about the experiences of women and girls, Indigenous peoples, diverse ethnic, cultural, or racial groups, diverse religious faith communities, people with disabilities, 2S LGBTQIA plus communities, people with different income levels, and neurodivergent people. And we are needing a definition if you're able to point us to one.
Trustee Clark put his hand up, so maybe Trustee Clark would like to help
Yes,
with that.
given the pervasiveness of anti-Black discrimination, I think they should have a mention here as well.
Okay.
Since we have Indigenous people, I think considering the way society still is,
Thank you.
that's just my thank you.
So you're suggesting we separate out the BIPOC, people of color.
I think what I heard was that we would add anti-Black racism as
specifically.
Yeah,
we would maintain the other one.
Better. Yeah, BIPOC is probably better.
Well, that's Indigenous peoples, I remembered.
Oh, right. Yeah,
yeah.
You're right.
So
Sorry.
yeah, people. Yeah, so Black.
So, yeah. Yeah, even though you have diverse ethnic, I think, yeah.
Okay. If we're going to I would, since we're going to add Black, I would I'd like to add the cultures that make up because we learned in the last census that Peel is actually, what is it? It's over majority of the people from Peel are immigrants, which is fascinating. That makes our community so robust and interesting. But I'm wondering if we can add that somehow, not just Black, but the
Yeah,
other
I
people,
see what you
other
mean.
people of color. Carol, you put your hand up.
Yeah, I'm sort of questioning that one only because some don't identify either one way or another because they could be biracial also, right? So you may want to include biracial as part of that.
So Black biracial?
Well, I wouldn't say Black biracial, but biracial is a separate line.
Yeah.
Because you could be different biracials, right? So.
That's true.
And also, I'm wondering if there should be another one for education level. You know, some go to university, some are in the trades, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Barb, you still have your hand up. Did you want to add something?
No, sorry.
All right, the last one, next slide, this is the last slide. In my school, I have learned about human rights or social justice. There's a definition, equity and fairness, issues related to, and then it's a similar list, not quite the same. So women and girls, Indigenous peoples, diverse ethnic, cultural, or racial groups, diverse religious faith communities, people with disabilities, gender identity, sexual orientation, people experiencing job, food, or housing insecurities, the environment, poverty.
Jennifer?
I don't understand the brackets behind people with disabilities.
So this was a comment to ourselves, I think. We wonder if we should have examples to support the students in thinking about their answer.
So examples for reference that have, okay, I got it. That have,
right. So in the previous slide, there was neurodivergent. It was missing a definition. So we still need to complete that. And I'm wondering, do you agree that examples here, beside people with disabilities, might be helpful for students?
Gotcha.
Thinking about human rights and social justice and people with disabilities.
Gotcha. Okay, I read that wrong.
Again, you know, maybe because if we're going to separate out Black in the previous slide, I think we need to separate it out here.
I think so.
You know, when it comes to disabilities, I think there are the physical disabilities, and then there are the then there are the other disabilities. Then there's the intellectual disabilities, and I don't know, lumping them all together. I don't know how people feel about that. If we're separating out gender identity and sexual orientation, why are we lumping all the disabilities together? And I agree with separating gender identity from sexual orientation. Yes, Carol?
I was just wanting to make a comment. Maybe we could also have a line here for other, so that they have an opportunity to put something else in there that they don't think they can answer to and above.
So another area.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, you've given us lots of feedback. The team will be quite pleased. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing this to us. Jennifer?
Is this all the questions that will be in the survey?
No,
okay.
There are many, but we brought questions that would be of particular interest to SEAC.
So do you have, or could you bring back the stuff on like extracurriculars and things like that? I think that's an interesting one for, I think, maybe I'm wrong, but as long as you have them like that, you know, are you included in extracurriculars? Are you included in field trips?
Oh,
Are you,
okay.
you know, all those kinds of things?
Okay, so if you wouldn't mind just sort of jotting down some of the things that you're wondering about, we can make sure that we have considered them. That would be helpful. It's kind of late now, so.
Thank you. Jennifer, do you have something else to add?
Yeah, last question. I know it's late. So is there a way we can feedback information to you after the fact? Like I know that first big paragraph, you wanted some feedback on that. Can that be sent out to the team? And then any other thoughts we could forward?
Sure, we would gratefully accept any more feedback you have.
Plus any input with regards to our neurodivergent people. Thank you.
And any queries you have about questions that you think are important to ask our students.
Wonderful. And do we send those by email to you, Lynn?
Sure, that would be fine if that's the way this works.
So is it Lynn Hollingshead at?
Yes, with an E, LYNNE.Hollingshead.
Okay. Is there, I didn't bring a pencil. So if somebody's writing this down, please could you nudge me? Because I'm going to forget. I'm so bad.
I think your email's on the pamphlet. I could email you myself.
Oh, that would be great, Lynn. I would really appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. So do we move for receipt of that, or do we? It was kind of a report. Ted?
I don't think that, through your chair, I don't think that SEAC needs to receive it. It was feedback that was sought, and I think the committee's been great at providing that. Thank you.
So we're great. Yeah. Thank you, Lynn, for bringing that, and thank you for asking for our input and listening to us. We really appreciate that. So we're moving on to number 15, which is adjournment. I'd like to thank everybody for their participation. I'd like to thank the new trustees for listening and for providing input. Trustee Clark, you've accepted 2 things already. We commend you for doing that right off the bat, and for being a fellow neurodivergent person. I appreciate that on the board. So would you like to move for adjournment then? Okay. And Superintendent Byers?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Superintendent Byers, if you're not here next next meeting, we really appreciate you jumping in. We really appreciate all the work that you've done and the guidance that you've given us for the past 3 meetings and the guidance that you've given the the staff. Yeah. But we will be happy
for
to
that, Chair. Thank you for that.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Happy